Let's get started. Welcome to session 3 of the NBI Academy live program. My name is Ronja Bechauf and I'm a policy advisor at IASD. I will guide you through the training session today. While we're still waiting a little bit more for people to join, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and also let us know how you're feeling today. This third session of our 5-week live program will focus on the economic valuation of nature-based infrastructure, specifically on how to create integrated cost-benefit analysis using Excel models. I would also already like to welcome my colleagues. We'll hear a lot more from Michael today. You'll see other colleagues in group discussions later. And also a very warm welcome already to our guest, Adane Kubede, from the World Resources Institute in Ethiopia. Thank you for joining, Adane. We'll hear more from you later in the session. Now, before we dive into the content, a few words on the housekeeping. Now, as we're a big group, please keep your microphone on mute while we're in the plenary. We'll have an exercise in breakout groups later today, and there you can, of course, turn on your camera and unmute your microphone, if that's possible. We are recording the session, and as in the last weeks, we will share the recording as well as the slide deck with you in the next days. And we're also uploading all the course materials to the NBI Center website, where you need to log in to access them, please. And important also for managing this course, if you have a content-related question to the speakers, please ask that question in the Q&A box. So the Q&A, not the chat, please, because it's easier for us to pick your questions from the Q&A. So much about the housekeeping. Now, for the plan for today. The focus is on integrated cost-benefit analysis and how to show the economic value of nature-based infrastructure. So Michael will kick us off with an introductory presentation about cost-benefit analysis, or CBAs, as we say in short. And then we'll spend a lot of time in the middle of the session on a case study. And this week's case study is from a city called Dire Dawa in Ethiopia, where ISD and the World Resources Institute and a lot of partner organizations are implementing nature-based solutions right now. So we'll also hear reflections from Adane about that project, and Michael would show us how we actually calculated that cost-benefit analysis using an Excel model. Just a brief note, if I could ask my colleagues to please admit people from the waiting room. Thank you. And in the last part of the session, we'll have a group exercise. So we'll split into breakout groups again. You get a chance to speak to each other and run an exercise about cost-benefit analysis. And between all these different sections, we'll have some time for questions. Before we dive into the content, I would like to give you a little bit more context on where we are in the course. So Michael, if you could show the next slide, that would be great. Now, as a reminder, this program is about how to make the business case for nature-based infrastructure, how to convince governments and investors and planners and communities that scaling up nature-based infrastructure, investing in nature-based infrastructure actually makes economic sense and might bring more benefits than just investing in conventional gray infrastructure. How do we make that business case? One part of the answer is through economic valuations that show the benefits of nature-based infrastructure. And one way to do that is through integrated cost-benefit analysis. And at the Nature-Based Infrastructure Global Resource Center, we use a methodology called SAVI to create these cost-benefit analysis. And in the previous sessions, you already learned about SAVI a little bit, right? Last week, in session 2, we focused on the qualitative part of SAVI that you see on the top of that infographic. So we learned about systems mapping, how to create a causal loop diagram, and all of that to really understand the context and the dynamics of the nature-based infrastructure project. And today we'll jump to the bottom of what you see on this slide. We'll focus on the integrated cost-benefit analysis and on the Excel-based models we use to calculate them. And then next week, we'll focus on climate data as inputs to these models, and also more specifically on the climate adaptation benefits of nature-based infrastructure. So this is really a little bit jumping ahead so that you know the ultimate purpose of why we talk so much about the methodology. Today, we really look at the modeling and the cost-benefit analysis. Now it's time for the first presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Michael for a presentation on cost-benefit analysis. You already know Michael from the previous training sessions. Michael is a policy advisor at ISD and one of our experts for SAVI, so you're in very good hands for this presentation. Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Ronja. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this session as well. So today we will talk about integrated cost-benefit analysis. We have touched upon this subject last week, but today we will elaborate on it. We will also talk about the key indicators of the integrated CBA and how to actually build a CBA model, which we will demonstrate later in the session by doing an Excel model walkthrough. But let's start with the integrated cost-benefit analysis and the main kind of features it has. So, as you might remember from last time, the difference between an integrated and a conventional CBA, so this is quite important, is that the integrated CBA tries to assess the impact of a project or a city or a region or an ecosystem. It depends what we are looking at by considering a wide range of economic, social, environmental externalities or impacts to determine the project's societal value, so its value to society. Not only the financial indicators, such as how much it costs or if there are any potential monetary revenues, but a wide range of indirect economic, social, environmental impacts that are usually neglected in these kind of infrastructure assessments. This particular approach is relevant to NBI projects because as we know, they do not generate direct monetary revenue streams. Their impact has long-term socioeconomic and environmental benefits that are not visible initially, but tend to increase over time. So that's why we try to do with the SAVI methodology is to transform these externalities or these risks into alternative revenue streams to kind of convert those into financial cash flows. So from qualitative, this is how we start every assessment, to the quantitative part, which we will talk in a bit more detail today. As we've mentioned, an integrated CBA's foundation is qualitative. So it is based on a qualitative analysis that aims to subsequently inform the decision-making process with quantitative knowledge. It starts as a systems map, the causal loop diagram that we've seen together, to kind of understand the context of the NBI project. There is a kind of storytelling approach for us to identify all the different indicators, such as challenges, impacts, and specificities of a project. And then we move to the integrated CBA part, which is quantitative and includes a model-based analysis that enriches the storytelling by providing numbers. And the numbers that are basically convincing information for different stakeholders and decision makers that we work with. So the integrated CBA, what are its different parts? Again, the integrated CBA process is basically comparing the infrastructure investment required for a project to all its long-term impacts, to all its avoided costs and added benefits. And it is basically an overview of the value for money derived from the investment decision. As we have seen, we have, of course, the investment and operational maintenance costs that they are required for implementation. So how much a project costs. Then we have the avoided costs, and then we have the added benefits resulting from a specific investment over the lifetime of the investment. A net integrated benefit is achieved if avoided cost and added benefits outweigh the investment required for implementation. Important to remember that both avoided cost and added benefits are benefits, because an avoided cost is actually a benefit when it comes to an implementation or implementing a project. So if avoided costs and added benefits outweigh the investment, this is positive, and we have a net integrated benefit. We have a net integrated cost if total investment outweighs avoided cost and added benefits. So it's more expensive to actually implement the project than the value to society that will result from the project. So here is an illustration of an integrated CBA, which combines the outputs from various models to provide a more nuanced and comprehensive perspective on each investment alternative. So we have seen the CBA table in some case studies we have already presented. In this case, it includes the direct costs in gray color, the added benefits in green, and the avoided cost in yellow. As you can see, different models inform different parts of the analysis. So the direct costs in this case are informed by the project finance model. A lot of the socioeconomic avoided costs and added benefits are informed by the system dynamics model. And some environmental impacts can also be informed by spatial analysis, such as spatially explicit ecosystem service analysis. We mentioned that last week as well. This analysis uses the INVEST model. What kind of information does a CBA provide? So this is, again, kind of a general example of the kind of indicators, avoided cost and added benefits that it can provide, that we kind of identify during the qualitative stage. So the systems map, the causal loop diagram. We have direct costs, construction costs, operation and maintenance costs, financing costs. Then we have avoided costs, anything related to loss of production and revenue. If it's related to an agriculture project, for example, anything related to fertilizer and water use that might not be used. Avoided costs related to infrastructure damages from flooding or other extreme weather events. Avoided costs from air pollution and human health, which is very relevant to some of the case studies that we have presented and the case study that I will present right after in Dear Dawa. And then we have added benefits, any employment creation, land productivity and revenue increases, carbon sequestration, or any increase in tourism revenue as a result of intervention in nature-based infrastructure or nature-based solutions. All of this lead to some key metrics that you might be familiar with, as they are included in every conventional CBA analysis. Let's look at these key metrics in a little bit more detail. So these are essential for making the case for the economic viability and overall value for NBI projects. So we have benefit cost ratio, or BCR, which is basically dividing the total benefits of a project. Again, the total benefits include added benefits and avoided costs. So dividing these total benefits with the total costs to evaluate the economic feasibility of a project. So a benefit cost ratio greater than 1 means that the project is economically viable. Benefit to cost ratio that is lower than 1 means that it is not economically viable. And if we spend $1 or €1, then we get less than 1 back, so not economically viable. Then we have the internal rate of return, which is basically the discount rate that makes the NPV or net benefits equal to 0. It basically shows profitability. So the higher the IRR, the more profitable the project. And then we have the net present value, or NPV, or in this case, net benefits, if we look at cumulative values, which is basically the total benefits minus the total costs. So again, positive NPV indicates that the project benefits exceed its costs, making it a worthwhile investment, and negative NPV means that the total benefits are lower than the total costs. Now, how we build a CBA model, what are the different steps that we take usually? in every assessment in the nature-based infrastructure space or beyond. We start with the systems map and identifying key indicators as the first step. Then we assess the evaluation method and the data requirements. The third step includes the collection of data by doing secondary research or asking for local data together with local stakeholders and integrating them into the CBA model. So this is arguably the most time-consuming step because at times collecting data might take longer than expected. Then we analyze the results and the different scenarios, and we look at the different metrics that I showed earlier to compare them. So what are the differences in benefit cost ratio, the net benefits, and so on, to really understand their values and their differences. We then test simulation results through sensitivity analysis if there are uncertainties in our models and assessments. This step could include also the integration of additional sensitivity analysis scenarios if needed. And then lastly, we interpret, analyze, and communicate the findings to different decision makers as a final step. Let's look at what modeling approach we use to conduct the CBA. So there are two options in terms of model used for carrying a quantitative CBA and quantifying all of the different economic, social, and environmental benefits of an NBI project. We have Excel-based models. That's what we will focus on today. And we also have system dynamics models. The choice is very case dependent. So let's have a look at the pros and cons of both models. In terms of Excel models, what are the pros? I would say the most important advantage and the reason we have been kind of prioritizing Excel models in recent projects is that it's more user-friendly and flexible. So it is accessible to most users. It is intuitive. It's relatively straightforward for people that have basic spreadsheet skills, and it is highly customizable, which is very important because it can be adapted to different projects and shared with different audiences to use in the future, as we will do today, for example. Other pros relate to data management. So it's quite simple to input and organize data, perform calculations, and undertake data analysis. It is cost effective. There's no need for specialized software. Almost everyone has access to Excel, and it is quite transparent as well. So you can clearly trace back how indicators are calculated, which assumptions or values have been used, what are their sources, etc. Now, in terms of cons, overall, the biggest argument against is that it may not capture the required complexity of nature-based infrastructure projects. So it is difficult to integrate very complex interactions and model dynamic interdependent systems and feedback loops that are sometimes needed. It is error prone. It has limited capabilities for automated sensitivity analysis and optimization. And it has also some limits related to scalability. So basically its ability to handle very large data sets or very complex simulations. In contrast, system dynamics models, so we have important advantages in terms of being able to integrate all of these kind of more complex interactions that we mentioned, capture all the different complexities of NBI projects, and can handle large data sets, complex simulations, and advanced analysis. And it is also more visual. So it can show causal relationships, feedback loops, and simulations, and provide a more holistic approach in including the different economic, social, and environmental dimensions into a single framework. However, they are very complex and not very user-friendly. They require specialized knowledge and training to understand system dynamics models. They are dependent to specific software, which are sometimes costly, such as Vensim or Stella. It takes more time to validate and build this kind of model, of course, and it is less transparent and accessible compared to an Excel model. What do we choose in terms of model? How do we choose which model we're going to use? Basically, we ask ourselves if the problem at hand is highly dynamic, If it is highly dynamic, then we move to system dynamics model. We ask ourselves, do we want to share the model externally? If we don't, again, we move to system dynamics models. If the data is highly available, we can use system dynamics models. And if we do have a lot of resources and time. So if the problem is not highly dynamic, if you want to share the model externally, if the data is not highly available, which is the case in most assessments, and if we don't have too much time and resources, we use Excel-based models for our assessments, which, as we said, are more user-friendly and easily customizable. So I will stop here for a few minutes to answer any questions before moving to a case study of nature-based solutions in Dire Dawa, Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. That already covered a lot of ground. I think you can probably stop sharing screen for a moment so we can all see each other. And to all of you, please keep writing your questions in the Q&A box, and then we'll pick them up. We have some time for questions. Now, the first question I would actually like to bounce to Eduardo, so one of our colleagues who works with Savi, but is also an expert in finance for nature-based infrastructure. So Eduardo, there's one question in the Q&A box on whether the cost and benefits are considering the time value of money, and how we, if we use one, how we come up with a discount rate. And I know you already wrote one answer in the Q&A, but maybe you can still briefly answer this here. Thank you.
Yes, sure. So basically, in this context, for the SAVI assessment, it represents the cost and benefits in today's monetary value, and the discount rate generally selected with the project developer based on and aligning with the location and the characteristics of the project. But when we don't have this information, we also use a specific discount rate, which is a social discount rate of 3.5%, which is based on the UK Green Book guidance. And this is generally for an evaluation for generally public projects, let's say. So that's generally what we use in several projects. We use this discount rate of 3.5%. There can be also a sensitivity analysis where we use different discount rates to see the different the performance as well, how it changes if we consider different discount rates as well.
Thank you. And maybe it would be interesting that you post one or two links in the chat on assessments where the discount rate has been really important, or where you had to model different scenarios there. Would that be possible?
Sure.
Thank you, Edo.
You muted.
Thank you. Classic. Michael, the next question is for you. So in a lot of our NBI assessments, flood damages are a really important indicator for the CBA. So can you explain a little bit more how we quantify flood damages and how we monetize them, and how also we consider the likelihood of more extreme events in the future under climate change?
Thank you. So indeed, these are across many assessments one of the greatest kind of avoided costs. The avoided infrastructure damages from flooding or other extreme events. So to calculate them, what we do is we look at past events, ideally in, let's say, a number of past events, and then we can kind of find an average value of infrastructure damages. If this is not available, then we'll look at a few or a couple of events from the past, in order to actually calculate the annual value of the infrastructure damages in a specific location or for a project. Then what we do is that we look at this over time. So we use this annual value, but we also forecast climate change. So we will forecast that, for example, extreme weather events will increase in the future. So this kind of event is most likely to happen more often in the future. In that case, the annual value increases over time, and then at the end we calculate the cumulative value over the timeline of the project, usually 25 to, let's say, 40 years. So first annual value based on past events, then forecasting for the future, taking into account that it might be increasing, the likelihood of these events might be increasing in the next 30 years.
Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you also, Andrea, for asking that very important question. We'll dive into a little bit more detail here in the next session, where we really look at how we can integrate climate data and climate scenarios into cost-benefit analysis, because we know that the performance of infrastructure depends highly on climate impacts. So we really need to bring that into the cost-benefit analysis. Very important point. I think there's one more question here that Eduardo, you would like to answer, and that is about cash flow analysis. So how can the NBI projects maybe result in additional cash flows that make the NBI project attractive? How do we treat that in our integrated cost-benefit analysis?
Yes. So basically, in the SAVI analysis, we look at the benefits so in the economic analysis, we treat it separately, as it's not like really a financial analysis. So maybe the cash flow analysis is more relevant in case of a financial analysis, but that's something that we will look probably after at for the last session. Although what I can say in this case is that, so basically in a cash flow analysis, we see the cost and how the benefits can generate potentially a revenue stream. So basically, we look at those tangible benefits related to economic activities, so more tangible benefits, and we see how we can convert them into revenue streams. Generally, we look at financial instruments, or like, to make an example, like carbon credits. So carbon sequestration is the benefit, but we can convert it into revenue stream by selling carbon credits. So that's very simplistic example in order to see better how the cash flow is generated. But that's something that maybe we will look a little bit more in detail in the next session.
Perfect. Thank you a lot, Edo. We'll keep answering questions in writing in the Q&A box, but now it's already time for the next presentation, because we'd like to make all of this talk about cost-benefit analysis a little bit more practical for you. So Michael will tell you about the nature-based solutions that are being implemented in Dire Dawa in Ethiopia, and also how we used SAVI to assess their value for climate adaptation. Please keep writing your questions in the Q&A box, and then we'll pick them up later. And whenever you're ready, Michael, I'll bounce that to you, and then later we'll also hear some reflections from Adane from the ground, who's really an expert there. So Michael, over to you.
Thank you. Everyone can see my screen, I hope. So I will present a case study of nature-based solutions interventions in Dire Dawa, now one of the biggest cities in Ethiopia, as part of the Sankasa initiative. So Sankasa stands for Scaling Urban Nature-Based Solutions for Climate Adaptation in Sub-Saharan Africa. I will briefly talk about Sankasa and the nature-based solution interventions in Dire Dawa, and then I will present the results of the SAVI assessment, so the economic analysis we undertook. So let's start with Sankasa to provide a bit of background. So Sankasa seeks to use nature to enhance climate adaptation, gender equality, social inclusion, and biodiversity protection in urban communities in Sub-Saharan Africa. It is implemented in 3 locations. So in Dire Dawa, Ethiopia, the project that I will present today, in Kigali, Rwanda, and in Johannesburg, South Africa. Sankasa is implemented by ISD together with the World Resources Institute, in collaboration with a lot of local organizations in the 3 locations, and aims to benefit 2.2 million people living in high flood risk areas, at least 50% of which are women. As Ronja mentioned, right after this, we will also have a conversation with Dr. Adane, who is a nature-based solution specialist within the city's programs of WRI, and basically has been the city coordinator of the Dear Dawa Sankasa project. So he has played a central role in supporting us in this project. So let's look at this project specifically. The project in Dear Dawa. So it aims to restore the Chatu River catchment, which is the main river that passes through the city, in order to address challenges such as flood risk, erosion, urban heat, and water stress. So the nature-based solution interventions that we are assessing in this case in Deir Dawa include a combination of afforestation, reforestation, agroforestry for runoff management, restoration of riparian zones, and urban tree planting in the city of Deir Dawa to reduce flooding and heat impacts. Main objectives include to reduce soil erosion, to enhance groundwater recharge, to develop buffer zones along the riverbanks, to expand opportunities for agroforestry, as well as increase land productivity in the long run for better livelihoods. So, as we have discussed also last week, as you know, with Savvy assessments, we always start with a systems map or causal loop diagram to really understand the context. The causal loop diagram represent kind of the dynamic interaction of the economic, social, environmental indicators of the systems that we are analyzing. What we are trying to do through the creation of this of such a systems map is to understand the relationships or synergies between different indicators in order to get a clear idea of the context. So this is how the CLD or systems map looks like for the project of Deir Dawa. So I will not go too much into detail here, but basically we are looking at a wide range of indicators and relationships, including increased population and deforestation, how this has decreased vegetation and biodiversity over time, while increasing flood risks, infrastructure damages, water pollution, and other negative human health impacts, how increasing need for agricultural land and water puts further pressure on these dynamics, and how we can provide some solutions to these problems or reverse some of these negative feedback loops through nature-based solution interventions that you can see in orange. So it includes all of the different interventions we mentioned, natural buffer zones, land restoration, agroforestry, tree planting in the city, and so on, and extreme weather events, as you can see in red, including droughts and heavy rainfall events and high temperature, make these problems worse, of course. From this qualitative assessment, the systems map, we have identified some key indicators to quantify. In this case, we have, of course, the direct costs, so construction or implementation costs relating to the tree planting and material costs and the operation maintenance costs of these trees. We have avoided costs related to flood damage to infrastructure, avoided cost of human health from floods, from water pollution, and from heat. So 3 different avoided costs related to human health. And in terms of added benefits, we have income creation from additional employment that the nature-based solution interventions will create, and of course, carbon sequestration from the tree planting efforts. We also looked at different scenarios and sensitivity analysis. So we have the main scenario, the nature-based solution or NBS scenario that includes all of the different interventions that we just mentioned. But we also developed sensitivity analysis based on a few things. So firstly, we came across our report on tree survival rate. What would happen if 94% of trees planted survived? We created a scenario based on that. Then we created another scenario, a sensitivity analysis scenario based on the changing value of the social cost of carbon. So we have two sources in this case. We have a source from the OECD, which is 6.6 euros per ton of CO2. And we also have a source from the World Bank, which is $40 per ton of CO2. So we have two scenarios to compare what would the results be if we use a higher or lower social cost of carbon. We also have a scenario where we combine the tree survival rate and the higher social cost of carbon. So let's look at the CBA table. As we've seen in other case studies as well. So we have the direct costs in blue and the added benefits and avoided costs in green. These values are all discounted at 10% and are cumulative from 2025 to 2050 in this case. The table also shows the undiscounted net benefits of the scenarios, the discounted, of course, net benefits and the benefit to cost ratio. So let's look at these in a bit more detail. So you can see that the NBS scenario is economically viable with a benefit to cost ratio of 1.36 and cumulative discounted net benefits of 101.6 million birr, the currency in Ethiopia. Of course, if we don't discount the values, they are much higher. We also see that if only 94% of trees survive, the project is still economically viable with a benefit cost ratio of 1.28 and net discounted benefits of 78.6 million birr. This is because the initial investment costs are the same, but the benefits are slightly lower than in the NBS scenario because less trees survive, of course. In the next sensitivity analysis scenario, where we use a high cost of carbon, we see that the net benefits and benefit cost ratio increase because of the increased carbon sequestration benefits. So net benefits are 359.7 million birr for the next 25 years cumulatively. And we also have a BCR of 2.28. And if we can combine the other two sensitivity analysis scenarios, we have net benefits of 321 million birr and a 2.14 benefit cost ratio. So let's look at all of these results visually as well. So here we can look at the impacts individually and how much they are valued over time. We see the greatest kind of cumulative benefits as a result of the nature-based interventions are what we talked about earlier, the avoided flood damages to infrastructure valued at 188 million birr from 2025 to 2030, followed by the avoided health costs from water pollution, valued at 65.8 million birr, and carbon sequestration benefits are the third biggest benefit at 54.2 million birr. We can also see from the costs that are blue that the operation maintenance costs of the interventions are also substantial, but not enough to make the project not economically viable. So it's still very positive. Let's look at these these results in different graphs. So on the left, you can see the cumulative net benefits of the nature-based solution interventions. Again, at 101 million birr, we see the initial investment. And then we see the added benefits on the left in blue, which include carbon sequestration and employment creation. As we can see, the carbon sequestration cumulative benefits are substantial. And on the right, we have all the avoided costs in orange, from which, as we mentioned, the avoided flood damages to infrastructure are by far the highest, followed by avoided health costs from water pollution, floods, and heat in this order. So on the graph on the right, we have the same impacts, but grouped into basically along economic, social, environmental benefits. So economic benefits are the highest and include employment creation and avoided flood damages to infrastructure, amounting to almost 200 million birr over the next 25 years, followed by the social benefits that are related to avoided human health costs, valued at 130 million birr for the next 25 years, and the carbon sequestration benefits make up the environmental benefits. And of course, at the top, we also have the investment costs, so the implementation and operation maintenance costs, which represent only the tip of the iceberg, as there are all of these economic, social, environmental benefits, let's say, underwater or not, or indirect, not initially visible, these benefits that are usually not considered or not taken into account in similar analysis. And this is the last slide, which kind of summarizes the results of the project and looks at these values in dollars. So it's same results, same values, but not in Ethiopian birr, but in dollars. Again, the general takeaways are that over the next 25 years, the nature-based solution interventions would lead to savings of $1.35 million in avoided flood-related infrastructure repairs. And if we group all the avoided health costs together, so the health costs from water pollution, heat, and floods, then that would save almost $1 million cumulative as well. So in terms of added benefits, we have up to 175,000 tons of CO2 stored from 2025 to 2050, valued at almost $400,000 using the low cost of carbon. And the project will also create 7,000 jobs, with economic benefits valued at $81,000. So these are the results of the project overall. I will stop here to also allow Dr. Adane to answer some questions and provide more info on the project. So thank you very much. I will stop sharing for now. Thank you. Over to you, Ronya.
Thank you so much, Michael. Really helpful. And I will, of course, share the slides after the session so you can all have those details yourself. Now, again, a very warm welcome to our guest. Welcome to Adane Kebede from the World Resources Institute. Adane, if you can turn on your camera as well, that would be lovely. And I really look forward to hearing a few reflections from you. So for all of you, as we already mentioned, Adane works with the World Resources Institute and is a nature-based solutions specialist, specifically working in the African Cities Climate Resilience Program, and a very important partner for our Sankasa project in Ethiopia. Hi, Adane, and can you maybe kick us off by just explaining a little bit more about your role in the Sankasa project and in implementing the nature-based solutions in Dire Dawa?
Thank you, Ronia, and thank you, Michael, for the presentation. I think it's very interesting. Hi, all, to meet you in this interesting training. As Ronia said, that my name is Adane. I'm an NBI specialist at WRI, World Resources, African Climate Center, and as well as Sankasa PM in Redor. Regarding my experience that I'm taking on a key leadership role by coordinating partners and offering technical expertise to ensure that nature-based solutions are both contextually relevant and scientifically robust. And also, additionally, I am managing the project operation to provide comprehensive support to implementing partners, facilitating smooth and effective execution of NBS in Redor. Specifically on roles like as a nature-based specialist and PM in Redor, I'm ensuring the designing and implementation of gender responsive NBS in Redor is particularly in the Chatu River catchment is smoothly implementing, and also ensure and coordinate the integration of NBS into urban planning to address water stress and enhance resilience, urban resilience in particular, and also ensure engagement of local communities, especially women and marginalized groups in planning, decision-making, and stewardship of NBS, and also facilitate collaboration with local communities and civil society and technical partners to ensure sustainability and sociability of this intervention, especially the NBS intervention in Dredwa. Maybe something that worth to mention is also support mainstreaming NBS into a local policy framework and supporting capacity building like for long-term management, because this way we can ensure the sustainability of our intervention, our activity. And finally, I'm also engaged in supporting and facilitating monitoring, evaluation, and also reporting the ecological and social impacts of implemented solution for Sankasa. I think let me stop and back to you, Ronia.
Thank you so much, Adan. And I think that's also really relevant for the participants here, because it's not just about putting trees in the ground, right? It's about all the management around it, making sure that local communities are involved, that the NBS also addresses gender equality and social inclusion. It's about making sure that these NBS is actually integrated into land use planning and other local policies to make sure they are maintained in the long term and are sustainable. So I think all these reflections are really, really important here. I would still like, I mean, you've been very closely involved in the cost-benefit analysis that we developed for the Sankasa NBS in Dredwa, and also in creating that causal loop diagram, for example. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience with that SAVI methodology and also this approach for an economic valuation? Because I don't think it's something that has been done there locally before.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's, yeah, that's very true for data, even for some of us, it is a new approach that valuing our resources or what is we are implementing in the ground, so that it's really telling us how our investment is benefiting or in other ways or costing us. So this SAVI model of cost-benefit analysis is really especially encouraging or helping when integrated with the tools like SAVI, and can be a powerful enabler for scaling nature-based solution or any-based activities at the ground. Grounded on the sustainable asset or SAVI method, the integrated cost-benefit analysis of Sankasa NBS, for example, intervention in Dredwa, for example, demonstrated that investing NBS brings scientific, significant social, environmental, and economic returns. So this is, I mean, for the Sankasa implementing partner as well as the government, this model really, you know, strikes something on our head that, okay, our implementation, our investments are really very productive and very benefit for future, you know, urban resilience, like protecting the flood, reducing the urban heat stress, and also addressing the issue of water scarcity. For example, we understand, and of course, it has a two-way of benefits, like direct benefits as well as co-benefits, as Michael already mentioned during his presentation. Therefore, the positive CBA balance invites for further investment. For example, there is an additional gain for each investment cost in the long run. This way, we can invite investor or invite any potential donors to invest in NBS by taking this advantage into considering that a future better investment or better benefits in different ways. This is something I also gained from this cost benefit analysis and survey model. And the other one is also supporting budget allocation, for example, in the investment. As I said, this is really motivating local government as well as other interesting parties to invest on these aspects, and informing policy and planning is another aspect that we can also learn from the CBA model. Maybe the last point here I want to mention is that building stakeholder buy-in is also a good opportunity, and also I learned from this CBA analysis, and which quantified benefits, and also that helps us to make a decision in a better way, because we have now a quantified benefits in terms of monetary, in terms of cost and benefit, so that we can make, or the policymaker can make a decision on investment kind of things. So CBA can use in participatory planning and compare scenarios and build consensus. One last point that I would really like to share from my experience, it also needs a huge data sets or data-based management or data that to make a sound cost-benefit analysis, so that it's also in telling us, in the future we need to create or develop some kind of database for this kind of analysis and this kind of policy making tools. Thank you.
Thanks, Adana. Yeah, and it's such a big point, right? The immense data needs we have to run such a cost-benefit analysis. We had so many rounds of validating the data inputs with the local stakeholders. You worked so hard to collect that data. So it's definitely something that we also experience in our SAVI assessments. But at the same time, when you have these results, they prove so useful for making the case for the NBIS and showing it to decision makers that indeed there's a point in scaling up these interventions and mobilizing the finance. So thanks a lot for that. We're relatively short on time, so I have one more question for you that I know already popped up in the Q&A box as well, and that is on the survival rate of the trees. And maybe you can share a little bit more on how you made sure that so many of the trees are actually surviving, that the NBS in Dirodava is so successful, and how you ensure that proper maintenance of the trees, because that was very impressive for me on the ground.
Thank you. That's an excellent question again. And ensuring the survival and the maintenance of trees in a challenging environment like Dirodava is very challenging, of course, and it's also very important to reach our goals. To make very short, to give you how our process is. For example, the first one is just species selection and site suitability analysis, really very important and also critical for reaching to this kind of survival rate, like choosing drought tolerant native or well-adapted species. Also site suitability analysis, including matching species microclimates, for example, planting shade-tolerant trees in narrow alleys and so forth. This kind of things is also very important. The other is multifunctional trees that provide, for example, shade, food, or erosion control that interrupt the community to safeguard the seedling and also seedling management. Also planting techniques, because it is also one of the critical parameters that ensure the survival rate. So implementing proper planting methods and also providing technical support or training to those who are involved or engaged in tree planting and seedling management is very, very important. The other smart way is, using water smart planting techniques like water harvesting structures or applying mulching to reduce or retain moisture and reduce evaporation. And also in urban areas, particularly using the gray water, reuse the gray water. And also the other important and very critical one is just community stewardship and also ownership, because we have to ensure that communities should take the ownership and so take the credit for what is happening there, because this ownership also lead to the sustainability of the trees or the high level of survival rate of the trees. And maybe the other point is that was mentioned here is that maintenance plans and institutional support is also there from Sankasa side. And also we have doing always the monitoring and adaptive management process all the time, and also consulting with all the relevant stakeholders, including the government and also local communities, and also land or resource stewardship or at grassroots levels. These are some of the important steps to ensure or increase the survival rate of the our trees planted in Dredwa. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Adana. It's always great to hear from you and get these confirmations. We have maybe 2 minutes for a little bit of Q&A now. So I would actually like to bounce the first set of questions to you. The first one is, we saw that there's a carbon sequestration value in the cost-benefit analysis. Are there actually plans to sell carbon credits for Diradawa? And the other one is related to the scenarios that we assessed. Did we actually consider comparing the nature-based solutions to a gray conventional infrastructure scenario? Or how were the nature-based solutions that we assessed and implement now, how were they chosen? Because you planned them very carefully. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about how the city also chose to go for a nature-based approach here.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question as well. Actually, this, especially in the case of Dredwa, our problem is just coming from the upstream. So, and there are lots of gray infrastructure that is, constructed in order to protect the flooding which is coming from the upstream, or it is, we can say that locally transboundary flood which is coming from the upstream, and then to protect that one, a lot of gray infrastructure has been constructed, but some of them are starting to damage because of the power of the water. And then through different feasibility study, for example, we Haramain University together with the local government conducted the feasibility studies that the NBI activities or intervention is really very important to to be implemented in order to address the city's socio-economic, environmental, and as well as the these disaster risk challenges from that perspective. So NBS so far this even before the CBS, the cost benefit analysis or the survey model, there is some common understanding that this nature-based solution have multi benefits to the community, to the environment, as well as to the whole climate, addressing the climate issues in the city, and even beyond. For example, when you're planting, each single tree capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. which is contributing to our NDDC, this nationally determined contribution, and also so that we can also, play a role in reducing global warming as well. So it is also can be changed into finance through, a very careful analysis. And also, for example, Michael also mentioned that it has also some indirect benefits through sequestration, carbon sequestration, and also can be, sold in global market. And also it has a very attractive prices per carbon dioxide equivalent. So this way, so that the government, local government, I would say, they are really investing a lot of, plantation, not only through Sankasa, but also nationally designated this green legacy initiative there is. And also government allocated 0.5 to 1% of the GDP to this green legacy initiative, so that it is really help to sustain our or ensure our future through NBI activities, or in green or greening, or planting, or rehabilitating our degraded lands, so that we can also create a number of green jobs, and also engage different community session or segments that can be also part of this kind of initiative. So in general, it has, I would say, it has a social, economic, and environmental benefits that NBS, when NBS is really designed, implemented in a very participatory way, that shouldn't leave anyone in the project. Back to you, Ronnie.
Thank you so much. Definitely also a topic that is close to my heart, the whole need for community engagement and local ownership of the project. And also great to hear that the government already committed that amount of money to the Green Legacy project. Yes, Tigist? Yes, Tigist. I can't understand the audio here. Thank you so much, Adana, for the reflections. We'll now have to move to the next part of the session already, because time is always running short. Thank you so much for those reflections. I hope you can stay for the rest of the session. Otherwise, thank you. And now we'll hear from Michael to see how we actually calculated these values in the cost-benefit analysis. Because it can seem like a little bit of a black box. So Michael will give you a brief overview of the Excel model that we used to calculate the cost-benefit analysis. Don't worry if you don't understand all the details. We'll have to cover a lot here in a short amount of time, but we'll send the model to you as well, so that you can play around with it when you have the time and explore that on your own. So Michael, over to you.
Thank you. So thank you very much. So we will talk about the Excel-based modeling and the cost-benefit analysis, and you will see this in practice. We'll go through the step-by-step overview of the CBA model now. I think it's also really important to say that 15 minutes is a very short time to actually understand the model realistically, but this could be a good introduction to see how we value these economic, social, and environmental indicators that we have talked about plenty of times. And since we will share the model with you after the session, this can help with providing some basic guidance and clarification. But yes, please don't expect that we will cover everything in 15 minutes because this is, more multifaceted than that, of course. But it would give a good general idea of how we work in Excel and how we make these calculations and include these indicators. So before we actually go to the model itself and describe the different sheets, assumptions, and values, we will go through a few slides that provide an overview of the model structure, and look at the most important Excel sheets in the integrated CBA model, which we will mostly focus in the next 15 minutes. So we will focus on 3 sheets, and in addition, the model guide. So the model guide, to start with, is the sheet used if we want some general information about the model and the different sheets. So if you don't know what each sheet is doing or what different colors mean within the model, you can go directly to the guide sheet and get more information. So from there, we can use the sheet selection to move from one sheet to another. Again, 3 sheets are the most important in this case, and the ones we will focus on today. And these are the results, CBA input, and the CBA time series. So let's look at them quite quickly before jumping into the model. So the result sheet, this is where you can find the final results of the analysis. So everything that I showed to you earlier during the presentation on Diridawa or during other case studies comes out of the result sheet. So it's basically the output of the model, where you can select different indicators to be considered in the analysis by switching them on or off, and you can select experiment and compare different scenarios. So as you will see, that's where we also compare the different scenarios with the sensitivity analysis scenarios that I mentioned earlier, by putting them one next to each other and comparing their values, their benefit cost ratios, and net benefits, and so on. Then we have the CBA input sheet, which is arguably the most important, in that all the calculations take place there. This is where all the data inputs are inserted, and the indicators, investment costs, all of the different avoided costs and added benefits are calculated there. And then they are being used in other sheets. Basically, the main kind of chain of events is that we calculate the different indicators in the CBA input sheet. Then we look at their value over time in the CBA time series sheet. And then we take that, it automatically goes to the result sheet, which we communicate during presentations or findings. As we said, if, let's say, the CBA input sheet is about the what or how much, where we calculate these indicators, then the time series sheet that you can see here is about the when and how long. This is where basically different indicators are defined over time, over the lifeline of the project, in order for us to estimate the cumulative values of our indicators. So where we basically take annual values from the input sheet and we calculate their impacts over time. So let's look at this in practice. I will share the Excel model. Again, this is the model guide. There is a short explanation of each different sheet here. So it's a good place to start. And what we have also done here is include different colors for different cells. So light yellow shade, that means that these are inputs, which means that there's data that we have found in other, let's say, reports, or if we're looking at the case study earlier in Sankasa related documents, secondary research material, articles, and we have included in the analysis. So they can be found somewhere else, the inputs. This means that we never include assumptions or calculations with a light yellow shade, so they don't have a color. It's only the inputs and the data that are external that we use. Then we have the blue color for values that are imported from other sheets, red for the values that are exported to other sheets, yellow shade for some of the values that are quite important and have a big impact on the final results. And then what I have also done here is that I have included green for exchange rates, usually from USD or euros to Ethiopian birr, because the model is in local currency in the Ethiopian birr. And I have also included orange shade for values that we have reviewed or revisited with different stakeholders. So maybe not directly relevant to you, but good to kind of include different colors to highlight the functions of the different values that we use. So let's go to the results, what we talked about earlier. Usually we have a baseline scenario, and then we have a nature-based infrastructure, nature-based solution scenario. So in this case, the baseline scenario is not very important in this particular model, because I have used 0 for most indicators, because basically in this case, baseline means that things stay as they are. So there's no nature-based solution interventions. So there's no change. So I haven't included any values for most of the indicators. Then we have the key inputs. So one for each indicator. These are all the avoided costs and added benefits that we are calculating. Basically, we have here 1, which means that it's switched on. What we can do in general is that basically we can choose which impacts to include. We can switch it on and off. So 1 is on, 0 is off. Right now we have selected all inputs, and it is recommended generally to select all inputs and look at the analysis holistically and consider all impacts. But basically, if you want to develop a scenario where we look at the benefits except 1, so let's say we look at the final results, but we don't want to include the value of carbon sequestration, then you can include 0 here and compare the results. Under that, we have the discount rate used, and then we have kind of the most important section where we have the main results in undiscounted values. Usually we don't use these results in the final findings, but it's very important to have them, and we use these results just to discount them, and then you can see in the end we have the discounted values, which are basically what we include in the final cost-benefit analysis table. This is where the different direct costs are included. These are cumulative values, of course. These are all the cumulative final values of all the different added benefits and avoided costs, which are included in project benefits. And then we also have, of course, benefit to cost ratio and net benefits. Now, what we do to compare the different scenarios, to create firstly and then compare the different scenarios and the different sensitivity analysis, is that basically this column F gets updated with final numbers. So it's an active column, which means that if we make changes in other sheets, these numbers will change. And then what we do is that once we are happy with one scenario, we copy here and then we paste somewhere here on the right only in values. So the difference is that this is an active column. These values are constantly changing if we are changing different inputs. But when we paste it on the right, basically they represent a static representation of the results in order for us to compare the different scenarios. So in this case, what I have here is the 3 sensitivity analysis scenarios that I presented earlier when I presented the case study of Diradawa. As you remember, 94% tree survival rate, high cost of carbon, and a combination of both. So these are static, right? No formulas. They don't change, just so we can kind of compare the different benefit cost ratios or net benefits. But these kind of models are made very importantly to create any kind of scenario based on the information that we have. So let's go to the CBA input sheet, which is, as I said, where all the fun happens. This is where we calculate on the different indicators. This is where everything happens. And you can see in the left side, we can select or deselect the different scenarios and the different indicators. As I mentioned, the baseline scenario in this case, I haven't selected it here. I mean, we can always kind of see it, but there's no need because in this case, there's 0 values. So we go directly to the nature-based solution scenario where we calculate the different indicators. So we start with the direct costs, operation and maintenance costs here, construction implementation costs here, and then we move to all the avoided costs and added benefits that you saw. So cost of flood damage to infrastructure, avoided human health from floods, and so on. And then we have also down here the added benefits. Now, how this sheet is structured, we have here the label, so what we are trying to value, what is needed for the estimation of this indicator. Then here we have the value itself. So here's the label, here is the value. Here we have the unit, and here we have the reference. So this is where we, I mean, ideally, we try to get locally specific data provided by stakeholders on the ground. In this case, Sankasa-related reports, or anything based on secondary research, internationally recognized sources, or other examples. We include the source of what we are using, but of course, at times where there are some data gaps, we need to include some assumptions, and of course, there are the calculations, and that's where we basically calculate all of the different indicators that we include after in the other sheets. So, as we've talked about before, the calculations end with the final number for each indicator, which represents the annual value of this indicator. So if we're looking at avoided cost of flood damages to infrastructure, the final value, in this case, we have divided it into two parts. So we have value of damage to buildings when flood occurs and value of damage to roads. Then we sum them up. They are red because they are exported into another sheet. And specifically, once we find the annual values for all of these different indicators in the CBA input sheet, we export them to the CBA time series sheet, which, as we mentioned earlier, is basically looking at these impacts, the indicators impacts year after year. So again, this represents when or how long this sheet. What we do is that we look at the timeline of the project. In this case, as you can see at the top, we have 2025 ending at 2050. So we look at the 25-year period. Then we apply the annual values. Here for the different indicators, we apply different growth rates depending on what we are looking at and the data that we have collected, and we look at their impact over time. And at the end, we're summing them up here to find the cumulative value, which is then after it is discounted, it goes back to the result sheets that we have seen. Sorry, the discounted values here. So the rest of the sheets, so we don't have too much time to go over today. So after the CBA time series sheet, they are mostly automated, so they are not as relevant, but in the summary sheet, what we do is that all the different calculations of the net change between scenarios happen. Again, these are completely automated. In the CBA KPI sheet is where we apply the discount rate, in this case 10%. And then in the financing and revenue flow sheets, in this case they are not relevant, is where we this is where we undertake the financial analysis if it is relevant. So again, these are the most important sheets: the result sheet, CBA input, CBA time series sheets. If you have any questions, the guide can answer many of them, and it provides a guidance. And because of limited time, I think this is something that you might have to also look into detail on your own if you're really interested. Once we share the model with you, I wish I had a bit more time to explain in detail some of these indicators and calculations and parts. But because of time, I will stop here and, of course, answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael, and I'm very sorry for giving you so little time for this walkthrough. Maybe we can spend a few more minutes with the model to look at some indicators that participants have been asking about. So one thing is maybe you can show us how and where in this model you actually compare different scenarios. So for example, I think this one is the nature-based infrastructure compared to doing nothing. How in such a model would we compare nature-based infrastructure to a great alternative, for example? Can you show that?
Of course, of course. So in this particular case, and sorry if I'm going too fast throughout the model, but we have a baseline scenario. In this particular case, it's most of these values are 0. And then we have a nature-based solution scenario, right? Very similarly, in a different project, we can have another scenario after the nature-based solutions, which is a gray infrastructure scenario. And this is quite unlimited, right? So we can have 2 or 3 nature-based solution scenarios or 2 or 3 gray infrastructure scenarios. Depends on the complexity that we want to add to the project. Some of these scenarios then get, let's say, one scenario gets subtracted by the other one to see the difference and the final values. This happens automatically in the summary sheet. So you can see that here we have represented the 2 scenarios, the baseline scenario and the nature-based solution scenario, but there could be many more here if we wanted them to be included. What we do at the end and in the result sheet is that we can include the different scenarios and then compare them with each other. So here, in this case, we have one scenario, which is the NBS scenario. All of these values, as I said, are active. So if we change the indicators here, or we update these values, or we include more indicators, or we include more assumptions, and we change the values, these results here will change. And then what we do is that we take this column, we copy and we copy paste it. We paste it here on the right, where the values are represented statically. So in a different project, that here we have one NBS scenario, and then we can select and choose a gray infrastructure scenario. What we would do is that we would choose the NBS scenario, we would see the results, we would copy and paste it somewhere here, let's say, and then we would select the gray infrastructure scenario, we would see the results, copy and paste it next to it, and then we see the difference in BCR, net benefits, or in any other indicator that we want. So this, let's think of this model as quite a simple one compared to if we're looking at very in a wide range of options. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Michael. Yeah, I'm always astonished with but at the same time, how flexible this model is. We can adjust it to all the different kinds of projects, all the different scenarios you might need. So that is always great to see. I want to give us enough time for the group exercise. So if it's okay with you, Michael, I would actually just end with the Q&A here, and we keep answering some of the questions in writing, and we move to the exercise. Would that be fine?
Sure, of course.
Okay. You all have very interesting backgrounds and come from all over the world. So we did create a contact list where you can voluntarily share with each other if you would like to share your interests. And I'm just going to put that in the chat here, and hopefully this time everyone can indeed see it. So feel free to add your contact details, maybe your LinkedIn profile there, and any things you're interested in, so that you can connect with each other. And like I said in the previous sessions as well, feel free to follow the NBI Center on LinkedIn and subscribe to the newsletter so that you're actually up to date on any new case studies that come out. And very briefly, just because this was the session on cost-benefit analysis, and we do have that handbook for the SAVI methodology. So feel free to check that out as well, in addition to the course materials. So today we really looked at identifying the costs and benefits and quantifying and monetizing that. And next week we'll have a deeper dive into the climate data angle. As you already know from the previous session, this course combines these live sessions on Zoom with the learning materials on the NBI Center website that are part of the e-course. So in this week 3, please keep studying the course materials for module 3 of the e-course, especially the blocks 2 to 4. So really the ones on cost-benefit analysis and the different modeling approaches. And then next week, we will meet again on Tuesday, and that 4th session,
Oiga,
sorry,
raro sucedió. Ayer ya ve que
maybe one of my
hice
colleagues can mute
una
that
vez.
person in the background. Thank you. So next Tuesday, we will meet again, and the focus will be on climate data and on the climate adaptation benefits of nature-based infrastructure. And if you explore the Excel model over the next days and you have any questions, please bring them to the next sessions, because we'll have a lot of modeling experts there as well that will be able to answer them. So I would really encourage you to think of any questions for that already. And with this, I think we're more than over the time. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much for all your active contribution throughout the session. It was a pleasure for me. Thanks to the entire team. Great job, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you.